And joining me now is Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania. Senator Fetterman, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Hi, well, it's great to be here. Hi.
Well, it is great to have you. Let's start with the results of our NBC News poll, which shows that Vice President Harris is leading former President Trump by 5 points nationally. Still, almost two-thirds of voters say household incomes are falling behind compared to inflation. Why should Pennsylvania voters trust that Harris can turn things around when so many voters say they don't feel the results of the Biden-Harris policies, Senator?
Yeah, well, it's a 5 points, so I mean that's encouraging. But now I'm not going to say, well, now I don't have to drive for 4.5 hours to have with a rally for Democrats in rural counties. So it's going to be very close, and you're going to see the polls. The Washington Post had a poll that I think is effectively tied, and the other kinds, just like yours, has Harris up. But regardless, I promise you, Pennsylvania is going to be very close. And otherwise, if it's not, it's going to be a great, nice surprise. But I'm expecting a very close and very competitive race through.
Yeah, it usually is in Pennsylvania. I want to shift now to North Carolina, another incredibly competitive state. Mark Robinson, the Republican nominee for governor, as you know, there reportedly made incredibly controversial posts on a pornographic website. Now, he's denied making those posts. Former President Trump has not dropped his endorsement of Robinson. And I wonder if you think it is fair for voters to judge a candidate based on who they endorse, Senator.
Well, of course. But I mean, it's great news for the Democrats. I mean, Robinson is actually, he's the new dream candidate to run against. Back in 2018, I thought the Governor Wolf and I thought Scott Wagner was the dream candidate we could run, and we smoked him by 17 points. And then, of course, Doug Mastriano came on in 22. And that's the best kind of Republican candidate that you could buy. And the Shapiro campaign spent millions of dollars to promote him as well, too. But then Robinson's like, hey, hold my beer. And now, of course, Trump's not going to walk back just because he's never going to admit what a disaster that is. But it's nice to know that he's going to win probably as a Democratic governor, but I'm not sure the impact that it will have at the top line. But it would be wonderful and almost ball game if Harris wins North Carolina. But she's made North Carolina competitive already. And then after Robinson, now we're in the best possible situation to win.
Let me ask you about another topic, the second apparent assassination attempt against former President Trump this week. This is what his running mate, J.D. Vance, had to say in the wake of it. Take a look.
The big difference between conservatives and liberals is that no one has tried to kill Kamala Harris in the last couple of months, and two people now have tried to kill Donald Trump in the last couple of months. I'd say that's pretty strong evidence that the left needs to tone down the rhetoric and needs to cut this crap out. Somebody's going to get hurt by it.
Senator, what's your response to Senator J.D. Vance?
I don't know who's actually listening to what Vance says. It's been months already. No one's not really listening to him anymore. He has developed a kind of reputation to say dumb things, pointless things, and offend everybody. And he's been picked as the most unpopular pick in history, but no one's listening to him. I'm certainly not. And we are right now.
To the substance of his charge, though, I'd say that's pretty strong evidence that the left needs to tone down the rhetoric and needs to cut this blank out. How do you respond to that specific part of what he says?
Now, that's absolutely absurd. Every Democrat condemned the assassination attempts, and I did as well, too. And, they're talking about eating the dogs and saying outlandish kind of things. Now, let's just have a serious conversation about this election, not talking about that kind of empty kind of rhetoric from somebody like J.D. Vance.
I want to ask you about something that Vice President Kamala Harris said this week. She was talking about gun ownership with Oprah Winfrey. She said, quote, if somebody breaks into my house, they're going to get shot. You, Senator, are a gun owner. As the leader of a party that prides itself on advocating for gun safety. Was it responsible for Vice President Harris to make those comments?
Absolutely. I think the vast majority of Americans, if you had somebody breaking into your house that might be there to harm you, you probably have the right to shoot them. And I think that's a vast majority of Americans would agree with that.
All right, well, let me talk about a big issue, another big issue, I should say, in your state, the issue of fracking. I know you've talked about this quite a bit. Vice President Harris, as you know, once supported a ban on fracking when she was running for president in 2020. She even sued the Obama administration to prevent fracking off California's coast. Now she says she will not ban the practice as president. Why should voters trust that that is really what the vice president believes?
So strange why we just keep talking about fracking. Now, back in 2020, I said that that might be an issue, but it's not going to be a defining issue. And now in 2024, we're still trying to talk about fracking. And now the other side, they're talking about eating cats and geese and dogs and saying absurd things and talking about how if Trump doesn't win, he said that, you have to blame the Jews on that, and just absurd things, like having a serious policy conversation when the other side is just absolutely on fire. And here's where we are, and here we are also that it's going to be very close in Pennsylvania, and it's not going to be defined by fracking.
Well, we are talking about it because, of course, it supported 120,000 jobs back in 2022. Let me read you some of what you have said about fracking. In 2016, you called it a stain on Pennsylvania. In 2018, you said you don't support fracking at all. But then in 2022, you said you absolutely support fracking. Senator, what exactly do you like about fracking now?
It's strange for some weird gotcha, kind of taking quotes out of context. And, here I am now. I'm a United States Senator, and I won by 5 points, a record margin back in 22. And again, it might be an issue in fracking, and I fully support fracking. So does the Vice President Harris. And now, if you want to have a serious conversation about policy, then I would challenge Trump and Vance to have one other than talking about eating pets. And
we'll have plenty of questions for Senator Lindsey Graham. There's no doubt about that. But to the point, what do you now like about fracking? You say you're not going to ban it. You support it now.
Oh, they're eating dogs. They're eating cats. Again, so, okay. Yes. And any more on fracking? I think.
Well, I want to ask you about the Middle East, actually. Let's move on because I do want to get this in. This week, as you know, a new front opened in the war in the Middle East, jeopardizing ceasefire talks. Senator Bernie Sanders accused Prime Minister Netanyahu of sabotaging a deal. Take a look at what he said.
Every time a deal appears close, Netanyahu moves the goalposts, introducing new demands and torpedoing the deal. It is clear to me that Netanyahu is prolonging the war in order to cling to power.
Senator, you have stood firmly behind Israel, but do you agree with any part of what your colleague, Senator Sanders, said there?
No, not at all. And I want to be very clear. I thought what Israel chose to do about blowing up the pagers and then walkie-talkies, and then after targeting and eliminating membership and leadership of Hezbollah, I absolutely support that. In fact, if anything, I love it. And Israel demonstrated that they will not allow terrorists not to be held accountable. And I fully support that. And it's not about nothing that has what my colleague has said.
All right. Senator Fetterman, it is always great to talk to you. Really appreciate your being on this morning.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.